Call of Duty Zombies has been a staple in my life. From my teenage years getting so excited over breaking a previous round record in Black Ops 1, all the way to my late college years and the disastrous Black Ops 4 launch and its subsequent recovery. This mode has been something that I've just loved for so many years. Admittedly though, after Black Ops 4, that love had tapered off a bit for me, and the yearly release of Call of Duty games just wasn't as appealing as it used to be. This year though, inexplicably, that passion was reignited when I saw some of the marketing material and trailer footage for Black Ops 6 Zombies. And oh boy, was I invested again. Welcome, everyone. This is my comprehensive review of Black Ops 6 Zombies. So, a little bit of background for myself with Black Ops 6. I have a total playtime of about 170 hours as of recording, and I am currently Prestige Master level 180. These aren't super important details, but it does show that I've put quite a number of hours into this game and interacted with a lot of the gameplay systems. So I feel like I have, a very unique experience to be able to talk about it as somebody who has been able to put a lot of time into this game and to really learn everything. Today, I want to be able to discuss the core gameplay systems that are offered with some potential ideas of how it could be improved going into previous games or even within this game's life cycle. I don't expect everyone to agree with it, but I think that's totally okay. So the structure of this video is going to come down to first discussing the core gameplay elements of Black Ops 6, and then branch off a little bit and talk about what appeals to me in this game and then what I wish could be better. So without further ado, let's begin. We can't discuss modern zombies without first addressing some of the gameplay systems that have changed over time, namely the points and loadout system. Just a quick refresher if it's been a while since you last played. In the older games, you would get 10 points per bullet into a zombie and 60 points per killing one. You would get 100 points per headshot kill and 115 points per melee. Now it's a lot simpler. 90 points per zombie kill and 115 points per critical or headshot, and 105 points per melee kill. I'll admit, this system did take some getting used to originally. When I played my first round in Black Ops 6, I played it similarly to the older games, buying wall weapons, spinning the mystery box while trying to upgrade everything and buy every perk in the game. And quickly I found myself overwhelmed and I realized that this strategy wouldn't work if I wanted to succeed. I think this is the point where people who dislike the new point system might be getting hung up, because it's so fundamentally different from old Zombies games. I can see why they would dislike such a big change. I would argue, however, that this change actually works really well with the outside progression system in place in Black Ops 6 that I'll touch on in a little bit. I think it kind of meshes well together with that. Now, to me, the arguably bigger change that occurred was adding a loadout system to zombies, going from using the classic starting pistol to whichever weapon in the game that you wanted. This, to me, was a change I didn't really even like at first, though I think I've grown to appreciate it after playing the game for a while. Every weapon has a rarity associated with it, starting at gray and progressing all the way up to gold, which will significantly boost the weapon's damage output. This upgrading of a rarity of a weapon, in my eyes, is kind of supposed to be the replacement to the progression of a weaker starting pistol to stronger pack-a-punched weapons out of the mystery box. And while it is different, it definitely works well with the game. I know this loadout system as it is now was really introduced in Cold War originally, but this is kind of my first real in-depth experience and longer playtime with it. That's kind of the frame of mind that I'm going to be tackling this from and looking at it from. So this is actually where I want to mention that progression system. In Zombies, every weapon has camo challenges, including 2 special ones unique to that weapon, which force you to interact with the different gameplay systems the game has to offer. These are, by no means difficult, but the grind for these takes long enough that you get to experience using every weapon in the game, which I think is awesome. I think being able to use every weapon in the sandbox as much or as little as you like, I think that's part of the fun of Zombies, getting to find the weapons that you actually really enjoy using. Black Ops 3 kind of had a similar system with the weapon kit and camo progression there. However, due to the randomness of the mystery box, and I would actually argue the older point system, you weren't necessarily incentivized to use every weapon equally, which I think this game actually does better with this point system. As a whole, the Zombies core gameplay loop hasn't actually changed. You're still working from a weak starting point to building yourself up to overcome the progressively stronger and stronger horde. The only thing that's really changed is the method of progression, which, while taking a little bit of time to get used to, is actually pretty fun and addicting. I know we likely aren't going to be able to go back, quote unquote, to the old days, but I truly think Black Ops 6 at its core still fulfills that zombies experience that I have always loved. Now that we've discussed some of the design philosophy and core gameplay features of Black Ops 6 Zombies, I want to take a closer look at what this game has to offer and share some of my opinions on what they've done really well and what I feel could be improved. So first and foremost, let's tackle the augment system, this mode's main gameplay progression system. Here, you start with base perks, ammo mods, and field upgrades, and have the ability to unlock up to 6 different augments, 3 major and 3 minor, via the augment menu. All you have to do is select which one you want to research, and as you earn XP through playing the mode, you'll eventually be able to unlock the whole augment tree. Now, the catch is that you can only apply 1 major and 1 minor augment to each item, giving the player the ability to choose what they value most out of the different options available. I like this system because of how simple it is to unlock every augment while also providing some interesting potential combinations that you can use to make yourself stronger in game. I do think, however, that there are some drawbacks as well. For me personally, outside of doing specific calling card challenges, I felt like that some of the augments were just a lot stronger than others without providing something significant to compensate for that lack of power, maybe some kind of utility, for instance. Once I felt that I had the most optimal setup, I rarely felt the need to go and change anything. Cold War had a more linear progression system where once you unlocked a new tier of upgrade, it would remain unlocked permanently. And truthfully, I might actually prefer that system of progression for zombies, even though I know it does technically make the game a bit easier. If I were to make a progression system framework, I think the permanent upgrade system mixed with XP-based research and unlocks could be a good balance of the two. Perhaps making the higher tier upgrades require more of a grind to unlock. If you played either of these games, I'm kind of curious to hear what your opinions on these two systems are, because I think they both have their merits, but at the end of the day, this kind of just comes down to what you personally prefer. And for me, I think I prefer Cold War system a little bit more to this one. But I do think that this augment system has a lot of really good points to it. My next favorite part of this game is the map selection it has to offer. I believe both Terminus and Liberty Falls were amazing launch maps that provided a great mix of hardcore and casual experiences, respectively. This really reminded me of Black Ops 3's launch maps of Shadows of Evil and The Giant, which was something that at the time in that game I really enjoyed as well. While Liberty Falls is by no means a difficult map with a pretty easy main quest, Terminus has an incredible boss fight and a unique new wonder weapon, which I've always found to be really fun to use personally. Season 1 introduced Citadel de Mor, which gave us probably the closest to a classic zombies map, while also not overcomplicating that experience too much. It experimented with the classic 4 upgradable elemental wonder weapons, this time in the form of melee weapons, which, while not my favorite class of weapon to use in zombies, it has still proved to be very fun to use in practice. The main quest and subsequent boss fight continued the impressive momentum that had been set by Terminus, and I think this map really got me excited about the future of this game the most out of the 3. Season 2 introduced the Tomb, which took a step back in complexity in favor of another casual, friendly experience similar to Liberty Falls. The Ice Staff returned as the wonder weapon of this map, and me being a huge Origins fan, I was really excited to see that come back. But truthfully, I would have preferred if this was another 4 elemental wonder weapon thing similar to Origins, being able to use all 4 different staffs, or another option potentially is that they could kind of make it similar to D Machine's wonder weapon, where you have one base staff and you can change out the elemental crystal into the 4 different ones if you wanted to keep it as like one weapon, but I understand. Honestly, I was just excited to see the Ice Staff come back. A side note too, is this is the first map that I've ever reached round 100 on, which has always been a goal of mine. I've just never really had the chance to be able to sit down and actually spend that much time in one game or really like lock in to be able to focus on that. And so I was really excited to be able to achieve that goal from this map, and thanks to the Ice Staff. The final encounter of this map proved to be similar to Liberty Falls, although actually a lot more challenging. I was surprised by this, but it was a really nice change of pace and almost kind of felt similar to an MMO style raid, which I think is actually like super unique for zombies. Overall, Black Ops 6 has an excellent selection of maps to choose from, and I'm really hoping that future release maps are kind of closer to the Terminus and Citadel experience rather than Liberty Falls and the Tomb. Not to say that I don't like those experiences, but I do kind of enjoy the more complicated maps that remind me a little bit more of like Black Ops 3. Now I'd like to talk about a new feature that's been added to Black Ops 6, Directed Mode. This simply aims to guide players through the steps of the main quest Easter egg, and generally comes out around a month or so after new maps are released. As you play through it, it caps the round at certain points, so you're able to complete the steps of the Easter egg at an artificially lower difficulty. Personally, I really just kind of use this mode for camo grinding, some of the guns that I'm not as fond of, but I think adding an option for newer players to be able to experience the main story and completing Easter eggs is always a positive. I think that really helps foster the community of zombies. I also like that if you're able to complete the main Easter egg of the map before the directed mode version comes out, you get an exclusive early calling card, which is a nice little bonus to throw on top of it. The next big feature actually returns from Black Ops 3, Gobblegums, and these are an assortment of different power-ups that can be used throughout the game. I think this system is simplified and way better than in Black Ops 3 personally, where instead of gambling for extremely overpowered and arguably game-breaking abilities, the gums' strengths are tuned back a bit to still be strong but ultimately not necessary to have to use to be able to complete the maps. Technically, you are still earning them randomly just through playtime. I believe you get 1 through 3 Gobblegums every 20 minutes of playtime currently, but you actually get the gums themselves rather than a currency used to gamble for them, so that's an improvement in my opinion. And I find myself only really using these for the Easter eggs or main quests, but I think in that role, they fit perfectly, and I think that's really all that they need to do to be able to inhabit that space well. Next, let's talk about a couple features returning from Cold War. The perk system remains the same, where you're no longer limited to 4 perk slots and can actually have all of them in the game at once. The only change, though, is that the Wonderfizz machine, the machine that contains the ability to purchase every single perk, is spawned in at round 25 now, which is a little bit later than before. As I've played this game, I have actually found that I can survive pretty consistently until that round 25 point with only 2 to 3 perks, which means I'm able to spend my points on upgrading my loadout weapon's pack-a-punch level and buying additional plates of armor. This playstyle might not be for everyone because it is admittedly a bit more glass cannon, but I think that's a positive because I know I'll be able to pick up the rest of my perks later, so it helps me feel like I'm being a bit more efficient with my points. Though if you want to be able to buy every perk that's available on the map, go for it. Ultimately, the playstyle is up to you, and the way that you want to play is up to you, so I would encourage any kind of playstyle. This is just the way that I found to really enjoy myself playing, and I think that that's really cool. Overall, I think I like how the perks are handled in this game, and to be honest, being able to see kind of that history of how perks have evolved all the way back from World at War now to Black Ops 6, I think that's really cool to be able to see that history throughout the modes as well. Another returning feature from Cold War is salvage. However, this time it's improved immensely because it's a lot simpler to understand, where there is now only one type of salvage, the green salvage. There's no longer 2 different types, the green and the blue salvage. I think this is actually a common theme now that I'm really thinking about it at Black Ops 6. A lot of previous games felt a bit overcomplicated or maybe a little bit bloated in mechanics, and here it's simplified and streamlined, and that's something that I really appreciate about this game. Salvage can be spent upgrading the rarity of your weapon and by purchasing score streaks, which to me is really easy to remember, and as you play enough, you'll be able to apply that knowledge in the game and you'll kind of understand what the prices are, what the breakpoints are for salvage purchases. So overall, pretty simple system. I really like how it's been simplified. Now, score streaks are interesting. I remember when I was playing Cold War, one of my first thoughts was, why do we get chopper gunners and zombies? That seems really out of place. And I still kind of agree with this opinion. I really don't like multiplayer streaks being copied over to zombies, though I do recognize that is a little bit of nostalgia maybe for some of the older games talking, and maybe I just need to embrace that new system a little bit more. What I do want to praise within this system is the zombies related score streaks that have been added of the Mangler Cannon and the Mutant Injection. These give that sufficient zombies feel, and truthfully I would love to see more of these creative ideas implemented as items into the game's life cycle as we get more DLCs and more maps. I don't really want to see more multiplayer streaks being copied over. I would love to see more zombies specific things that are being created just for zombies. One additional downside to the score streak system is that you have to be able to toggle through a menu to be able to purchase them. And this is something that I really disliked about Cold War, was how many menus and how janky it was to play the game. I still am not as big of a fan of having to navigate menus. It really breaks up the flow of the game, and it's something that I'm not really looking forward to. So, this might be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but I actually really like how armor works in this game. In Cold War, you had to run to a specific station. There was generally a place that you had to run to be able to repair your armor or buy new tiers of armor. And A lot of the times it was kind of out of the way of where you want to be, and you had to run across the map to be able to do it, or run to a different isolated position on the maps, and it kind of sucked, if I'm being honest. Now you carry around armor plates with you, and you can apply them at any time you want, anywhere. And I know that there are a lot of complaints about having to manually plate up, but at the risk of sounding a bit pretentious, I think that's just kind of a skill issue personally. You only have to click one button to apply the armor plate, and after playing the game enough, you will get the muscle memory to do that. So again, I'm not trying to be mean or gatekeepy or like whatever, right? I genuinely do think that this is something that is a bit overblown personally, and it's really not that hard to actually do. The trial system returns from Cold War in this game, though this time with a bit of a twist, a sassy German AI as the moderator. Now, if this retrospective was made at the launch of the game, I'd talk about how amazing and sassy Julie Nathanson's voice acting performance is for Sam, who is the AI companion working with the main crew in the story. Unfortunately, with the voice actor strikes currently going on, they actually recast the voice and retroactively changed the voice lines for every map's trials. I think the trial system itself is great, and the rewards are generally worth the difficulty associated with the different challenges. I just think that the voice recast really just kills the personality and charm that it used to have, and I really hope that it returns to the original voice lines at some point before the end of the game's life cycle. The ability to exfil returns in Black Ops 6, which I gotta say, I've always found to be really fun. At the beginning of the game, when you don't really have much unlocked in the augment system, it is extremely challenging to get through an exfil. Until I unlocked the mutant injection in my level up progression, I would regularly fail the exfil, but it never really got me frustrated. It just made me want to try harder to be able to succeed the next time and look forward to beating it when I was able to get a couple more upgrades or a couple more augments unlocked. I think it's a convenient way to end games without having to just go down and die like in the older games, and provides a solid amount of bonus XP upon completion. Also, total side note with this, I love how as you try to approach the exfil landing zones, you just get absolutely swarmed with zombies, all rising out of the ground, and it's a really underrated part of the experience. It almost makes me feel like I'm in a zombie movie trying desperately to outrun the horde that's chasing me. And this is so good for immersion. It really adds to that ticking clock of the exfil to really be like, I need to get to this place now or I'm going to die before I can even get there. And that is something that is so perfect. Oh, and I almost forgot one of the biggest marketed parts of Black Ops 6 in the Omni movement system. I'm not going to talk too much about this because realistically it's just the ability to sprint, dive, and dash in every single direction. But it's good. I like it. I think that the mobility that it adds to zombies is pretty nice. I feel like it would be kind of hard to just go back to the old movement system if I had to, so I hope that it's something that is applied in future installments of the game. Now, lastly, I want to talk about the Easter eggs, or the main quests as they're called in this game. I've really been a fan of the direction of Easter eggs, even though I will admit that the steps generally fall on the easier side of the spectrum. I think the final encounters, or boss fights, more than make up for this level of difficulty though, because they are quite impressive. Liberty Falls definitely has the easiest encounter of the maps, but this is a good way to introduce new players to the idea of completing main quest and encouraging them to try the other maps. Nothing special, nothing crazy, but it's fun. Terminus steps up that difficulty, with a couple steps that require you to be really locked in, namely the bomb defusal step. That one tripped me up a little bit at the beginning, all the way to the Patient 13 boss fight, which is not a guaranteed completion, mind you, and probably will require you to play it a few times to really understand its movesets and how to beat it. Citadel, I think, is actually the hardest to do solo, but the easiest to do with multiple people. If you enjoy the more fetch questy nature of older zombies Easter eggs, this is probably going to be the perfect map for you. And it caps off with the Guardian fight. I actually completed this one on my first try with one of my friends, but failed it solo in the directed mode, which gave me two very different perspectives of the fight. The Tombs Easter egg steps are probably the simplest of the four maps, where most of it is just kind of going through the ice staff upgrades, a couple lockdowns before you're ready for the final encounter. This boss fight more than makes up for the quick setup time because it is an absolute slog to get through, going through multiple phases before dealing with a potential wipe mechanic if you aren't able to do enough DPS in a certain time frame at the end. This, in my opinion, was probably the hardest boss fight of the four purely because of how patient you have to be throughout the course of the fight. And creating and following a strategy is pretty key to be successful here. Overall, I've been thoroughly impressed with the spectacle of the boss fights and how difficult they've been. generally requiring a couple attempts each to be able to complete, which I think is perfect. I think if you're going to craft a boss fight, it should not be too easy to be able to complete on the first try, but it should provide enough challenge that you'll want to come back and try to beat it, but also not being too impossible where it's just like really, really difficult and you're never going to be able to finish it. Now, while I have a lot of positive things to say about Black Ops 6 Zombies, and I really do love this game, there are a couple things where I'm not as enthusiastic about, and I do kind of hope to see some improvement for these as the year goes on. And the first thing on that list is armored zombies. I so strongly dislike armored zombies, and I understand why they are in the game, and I understand the purpose that they serve. I just personally do not agree with the design philosophy behind them. To me, they just feel really janky, and it's really hard to get headshots on them sometimes, even when you knock the helmet off. There are times where I'm 100% visually hitting the head of a zombie, and it's just not registering as a headshot, and it's just registering as armor damage, and just something about that just doesn't quite feel as polished as it should be for something so important as damage mitigation of armor. Now, actually, I'm a bit partial to the Mangler because it's a special enemy, and I know a lot of people are saying that they want to have different special enemies. Truthfully, I would take the Doppelgast, I would take the Shop Mimic, I would take the Amalgams any day of the week because they don't have armor associated with their health bar. I thought that when Citadel came out, it was such a breath of fresh air not having to deal with special enemies that had armor. These special enemies do eventually become a bit tankier than the weapons can output for DPS. I feel like the difficulty curve to reach that point feels a little bit smoother and a little bit better to play through rather than the armor just kind of like eating up your bullets into the mid and late round 30s and early round 40s. If I were to make a change to this system, I would just remove armor entirely from the zombies and change the health scaling to reflect that damage curve a little bit better. I just don't want armor on zombies at all, period. Now, weapon balance in Black Ops 6 to me is a little bit of a difficult topic because I think that as they're adding more weapons through the DLC seasons, these DLC weapons actually do feel a bit stronger and they kind of feel like maybe a little closer to where they should be. Still a little weak. I think they're a lot better than most of the launch weapons that we've gotten. I think overall the weapon power balance is too heavily indexed into the early and mid game rounds and not really strong enough for late rounds or like high rounds. Now, I'll admit normally I just kind of go to round 26 to 31 and exfil at those points for most games if I'm not trying to do an Easter egg or not trying to do challenges or anything like that. But I feel like I would be inclined to go to higher rounds if my weapons actually could keep up, and I didn't really feel like I was resorting to using like traps or mutant injection spam or anything like that. I know technically that is like high round strategy in every game, right? Like it's not going to be, you are using some kind of system that has infinite damage to be able to get to those points. But at least in Black Ops 3 with the double pack-a-punch things like Deadwire, you were at least using your weapons to go to a high round. And that's kind of something that I like a little bit more than using score streaks to do that, for example. I think getting a pack-a-punch tier 3 gold rarity weapon is a little too easy to do early in the game. From my playthroughs, I would say I consistently get to the highest level investment from my loadout weapon around rounds 21 to 23, and then I don't really feel like that level of investment really carries out the same level of power into the late 30s, the 40s, the 50s, up to that round 55 health cap. And I think potentially the best way to tackle this would be to either like lower the health scaling of zombies up to that health cap, maybe make them a little bit less tanky, or potentially, and this would, I think this could be kind of fun to do too, is create a new weapon rarity tier or a new pack-a-punch level. Unless we get like perks or ammo mods or something like that in the future that's going to help us deal with this problem currently. So this is the first Call of Duty game where I will likely be playing through the entire seasonal format from beginning to end. I've referenced playing Cold War a couple different times, but truthfully, I bought that with a Steam sale about a year ago, and that was well past the seasonal life cycle of that game. Currently, we've had the Vulture Aid and Death Perception perks being added, the Tesla Storm field upgrade, and the Light Mend ammo mod. And all of these are pretty fun. All of them kind of have their own little niche that they fill and things that they have helped improve since the game's launch to be able to add something to it. I think the one problem I'm having with this seasonal format, though, is just the general stability of the game. So I personally have not encountered very many bugs or issues. I've had like some blue screen problems, but that was only for like one specific patch that they came out with that did get admittedly fixed pretty quickly. But I just know that from what I've seen in the community and from what I've seen from different higher profile profile YouTubers or people that are more in touch with the community, it seems to be this big issue. And, you know, truthfully, I could see this being an issue for people that might have like lower spec PCs or just like things that could prevent them from being able to run the game well. I think that's just like one little thorn in the side of this game is how the seasonal format goes. I think it's nice that we get free DLC and free things that are being added to the game to improve it. It just feels a little weird because like a lot of these like free things that are being added in like new perks or new ammo mods or new field upgrades, like these are things that existed in previous games. They are now just being like reintroduced into the game where originally they were cut out from launch. So yes, it's new content, but it's not really like new content, if that makes sense. So that is something that I'm a little disappointed about with seasonal format. I'll have to revisit this again at the end when, you know, the whole seasonal life cycle is completed, because I think at that point the game's probably going to feel a lot more complete than it does now. So lastly, I want to talk about the main storyline of Zombies and unfortunately kind of some of the consequences that the current voice actor strike has on it. I've actually really enjoyed the direction and spectacle of the Dark Ether story so far, and I think having a dedicated crew back is actually a very underrated reason of why I'm having so much fun playing this game. When I played in Cold War, I noticed immediately that you're just using generic operators and all of the quotes are just like kind of boring, right? Like Call of Duty Zombies has always been campy. It's always been ridiculous. It's always been a little over the top, right? Like that's kind of the whole point of the mode.
I want to hear characters talking about the most ridiculous things in the game, whether it's Weaver's obsession with Richtofen every third line,
Headshots come real easy when I pretend the target's Richtofen.
or everything Blanchard says about his favorite egghead.
Oh no, Dr. Pelletier. My favorite egghead. Not just book smart, but street smart.
Or Peck constantly yapping about his warheads.
She can't have my warheads. No shit. The bastard ate my warheads. No, 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 no! My warheads! God damn it!
I want to hear just like funny quotable lines like that from characters. I think that's one of the best things that a dedicated crew brings. It's the consistency, and it allows you to kind of flesh out your characters with all of these really funny lines.
Now, I know this new Dark Ether crew, it's probably not going to be as good as like Primus or Ultimus or any of the original ones, but I just think having that consistency and fun bantery lines back and forth really helps endear them to myself and to people that play the game, I hope. Because of the voice actor strike that is currently underway, I think this is going to be one of the biggest threats to the quality of the game overall once that seasonal life cycle is over. We've already seen this with the Tomb, where there is no intro cutscene, and the ending cutscene, none of the main crew have any lines, and it's only just the replaced Sam voice actor speaking for pretty much the entire cutscene. Normally I wouldn't put that much thought into this, but considering the previous maps had a fully voiced intro and ending cutscenes, the drop in quality is noticeable. At the end of the day, though, I do like how the story is going. I think there are a lot of like interesting loose threads that are all out there, and I'm really curious to see how they combine everything together, especially including all the elements of the Chaos storyline coming back too. It's very interesting to see how they are going to juggle all of that to be able to create like a coherent story throughout the game's life cycle.
Now, I've talked a lot in this video about Black Ops 6 and all it has to offer, including my absolute addiction to it since its launch. I cannot recommend this enough to anyone who is a fan of COD Zombies, and at its core, the gameplay loop is so fun and replayable. I'm excited for what the future holds with this game, and I've really been intrigued by the story and the map selection that's come out so far. I really hope that it finishes out its seasonal life cycle to become the most complete Zombies experience to date. And if you've reached this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I know that this has been a really big undertaking and it's been a ton of work, but I've really always wanted to make a Zombies retrospective of some kind, and I felt like with Black Ops 6, it gave me the perfect opportunity to just talk about something that I love and that's been part of my life for so long. So, until next time, thank you so much for watching.